former US Vice President Richard Nixon met Raul's brother Fidel Castro, the communist revolutionary who managed to be a thorn in America's side for half a century. Politician George Galloway calls himself a friend and biographer of Fidel Castro. Having visited Cuba many times, he welcomes the thaw in relations.
It's very historic, and one has to congratulate President Obama, and I haven't had many occasions to say that over the last...
Leave that to take you to Yorkshire and to the Labour leader Ed Miliband.
Well, look, friends, we are now less than a month from the general election, and that might come as a relief to some of you. But we know what an important election it is, and I want to talk to you about that today. And for me, the election comes down to a very simple question, which is about how our country is run and who it works for. Do we believe that the country works best when it's run for a few people at the top, and we believe that the wealth will trickle down to everybody else? That's not what I believe. Or do we believe that the route to success for our country is based on the success of working people? Now, that's my view about the way we succeed. I say it's when working people succeed that Britain succeeds. And what is absolutely crucial to that is the future of our public services. And there is no more important public service and no more precious institution to our country than the National Health Service. And I want to talk today about the choice we face at the election on the NHS, because it couldn't be a more stark choice before the country. The NHS is our most cherished institution, but as Andy and Liz has said, things aren't right in the NHS right now. Everyone who has experience of the NHS or talks to patients who've been in the NHS or talks to the staff of the NHS will know that. The staff do a brilliant work in the health service, but they've had to struggle in the face of growing pressures over the last 5 years. And I believe the verdict on the last 5 years is in. The Independent King's Fund called the government's reforms damaging and distracting. That top-down reorganisation that David Cameron promised would never happen, and then he broke his promise. It is a major cause of the problems we now see. And we see missed targets on A&E waiting times, missed targets on cancer treatment, missed targets in relation to operations. Figures from NHS England released this week showed A&E performance at its worst for over a decade. A letter from more than 100 senior health professionals says this government has left the NHS weaker than at any time in its history. We've even seen people queuing out the doors of their GP surgeries. We've got ambulances backed up outside hospitals because A&E is overflowing. And we even saw this year a hospital forced to put up a treatment tent in a car park. That is the state of the NHS today. And after all, we do remember the promises that were made at the last election. We do remember, some of us, the airbrushed posters about protecting the NHS, about no more pointless reorganisations, about no cuts, no closures, about no return to people waiting hours on end at A&E. Well, those promises have been broken. And we've seen 5 years of failure and broken promises from David Cameron on the NHS. And now, today, he expects you at home to believe that he can make promises 4 weeks before an election when he can't tell you where a penny of the money is coming from. Let me tell you what David Cameron said in January of this year, and I quote, "The real risk to the NHS," he said, "is the risk of unfunded spending commitments, bringing chaos to our economy, which would wreck our NHS." That was what he said in January. The truth is, you can't save the NHS if you don't know where the money is coming from. You can only damage the NHS when you are planning colossal cuts in public spending year after year after year, which is what this Tory government is planning. The choice is clear: a funded Labour plan for more doctors, nurses and midwives, or unfunded promises from a Tory party that has a record of breaking its word. The bottom line is this: you can't fund the NHS from an IOU, and the British people know it. And so at this election, in this campaign, people have a choice, I think, like no other. A choice between two different futures. A failing Tory plan that threatens the NHS as we know it, or Labour's better plan. And I want to talk more about that now. Our plan is founded on putting the right values back at the heart of the NHS. I know what makes the NHS strong. It's care, compassion and cooperation. That's why we'll start by repealing the disastrous, the devastating, the damaging Health and Social Care Act, so we put the right values back at the heart of the NHS. We'll stop the drive towards privatisation, and where private companies are involved in delivering NHS clinical services, we'll cap the profits that they can take out of the public purse. But we also know, and this is the thing that Andy has led on, we have to prepare our NHS for the challenges of the future. Because the future demands integration of services, not fragmentation of services. And it also demands that prevention becomes as important as cure. We need an NHS that works more in our communities to keep people healthy and ease the pressure on hospitals. And also that tackles, and Andy made reference to this, the biggest unaddressed health challenge of our age, the quiet crisis in mental health. Investing early so mental health problems are spotted before they develop, and ensuring that teachers are trained to recognise them, because it's every part of our community that is responsible for tackling mental health. We also need an NHS that provides elderly people with the right care, in the right place, at the right time. Most of all, helping elderly people stay healthy and independent in their own homes. Ending the scandal, as Andy said, of rush 15-minute care visits by bringing together health and social care. And doing something else, enabling everyone to get to see a GP when they need to, with a guaranteed appointment in 48 hours or on the same day if you need it. And that is what Labour is promising and will deliver at this election. And we also know that our plan needs to be built on solid foundations, unlike the Tory plan. Fully costed plans for extra investment, funded by clamping down on tax avoidance by the hedge funds, a levy on the tobacco companies, and a mansion tax on properties worth over £2 million, a £2.5 billion time to care fund to recruit and train the doctors and nurses that we need, helping to ease the pressures on the front line. So NHS staff have more time for you, more time to get to know you, more time to find out what you really need. That is what we mean by an NHS with time to care. 20,000 more nurses, 8,000 more GPs, 5,000 more home care workers, and 3,000 more midwives. And this is a really important part of our plan. But look, there is no more important moment for us in relation to the NHS when we're bringing a new life into the world. All of us know from our own personal experience that it is a nervous and anxious time, but it is an incredibly special time. And it is a special time where the NHS plays one of its most important roles. I think I can say I remember it well. But at times like that, you need to know you're in safe hands. And Tracy talked about this. You need the reassurance of a personal relationship. You need one-to-one care. But we know that too many women are left in labour on their own, creating uncertainty at a time when security is everything. 1 in 4 women say they've been left alone and worried during childbirth. That increases the risk of complications. In some cases, even a danger to both mother and child. So today I can announce a key part of Labour's better plan for the NHS. All women in labour will be guaranteed one-to-one care from a midwife, provided by the 3,000 midwives we'll appoint with our Time to Care fund. A dedicated midwife by your side all the way through the birth of your child. One midwife fully committed to you. That's what we mean by one-to-one care. From when you go into labour to when your baby is safely delivered. Keeping you secure through the most important journey you'll ever take. And it will provide the best possible care for mothers and babies. Now, I think this is the kind of NHS we need to build. An NHS that cares, and an NHS that, as Andy Burnham has said, cares for the whole person, every facet of our physical and mental health at every stage of life. This is Labour's plan, a better plan for a 21st century NHS. An NHS with people at its heart. An NHS that inspires the country, and an NHS that once again leads the world. And let me say this finally, friends. It was Labour's task in 1945 to win the peace and create a national health service. It was Labour's task in 1997 to save the NHS, and it is our task to sustain it for future generations and to rescue it from this Conservative government, and that is what we will do. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Right, friends, we're going
To the stage, the two men now going to take some questions, I think. Let's listen in.
Professionals, we've got our media friends from our famous